Over a year ago now, I did a video on tabletop RPGs that aren't D&D, and the idea was to share some good alternatives to Dungeons & Dragons, but stay with games that do scratch the same itch. Games where you're usually going to have a game master and a party of adventurers of various classes and races going on fantasy adventures. I'll put a link to that video up at the top. In this video, we're going to be going very much off those rails into some pretty different sorts of role-playing games. We'll start with some that aren't too far out there, but we'll progressively take things further into some that are pretty much unrecognizable from an RPG like Dungeons & Dragons. I'll put links to all of these games down in the video description, and many of those are affiliate links, so using them is a great way to support the channel at no extra cost to you. So let's begin. Firstly, Star Wars from Fantasy Flight Games. Now, I just have the beginner games here, but there are core rulebooks for each of these as well. Fantasy Flight Games actually ended their RPG division a couple of years ago, so as far as I know, these games are no longer in print, but they are good, and you can certainly still find PDFs. There are actually 3 separate games. You've got Age of Rebellion, Edge of the Empire, and Force and Destiny, all with slightly different styles and slightly different kind of cross sections of the Star Wars universe. They use the same system though, so they are compatible with one another and can be combined with only minor tweaks. There are older iterations of Star Wars RPGs out there, and some people seem to like those better as well. But the reason these are on the list here is that the dice system is very different from other games I've played. First off, you notice these strange symbols, and without fully explaining them all, what they allow for is a more narrative interpretation of dice rolls with varying degrees of success. Maybe you succeed, but there's a threat symbol, so there's some kind of complication. I really enjoy this system, and I've played these games several times over the years. Next up, Monster of the Week from Evil Hat Productions. This game uses the Powered by the Apocalypse game engine, first seen in the game Apocalypse World. And what I like about this one is its emphasis on cinematic action. It's trying to capture the feel of shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or Supernatural. So picture more modern day settings in which dangerous monsters, aliens, and the occult are all very real. There will be one keeper, like a GM, and then you have the players who take on the roles of hunters, who have a series of moves based on their chosen playbook, like a character class. The playbooks all have interesting names like the Chosen, the Mundane, the Professional, or the Divine. And whenever an outcome is uncertain, the keeper will require a roll, which involves 2 6-sided dice, and then you can add a bonus depending on your character's attributes. Each move specifies what different totals mean, but usually a total of 7 to 9 is a success, and a 10 or higher means something even better. I found that the focus on narrative action is a lot of fun, and the game doesn't get bogged down in strategic combat. The emphasis is cinematic action, and you can accomplish a lot and tell a lot of story in a short amount of time. The game book is over 300 pages, and it includes a ton of great advice for the keeper for creating mysteries, and there's also a short introductory mystery called Dream Away the Time. So Monster of the Week, cool game, definitely check it out. Now let's talk about Tales from the Loop from Free League. This game is set in an alternate history 1980s with a lot of weird things going on, and the players are put in the role of kids solving mysteries. It's a bit Stranger Things-esque, but the game is actually based on an art book that came out 2 years before Stranger Things. This is honestly one of my favorite RPGs, and the thing that really made it different from any of the games we've talked about so far is there's far less focus on combat and a greater focus on problem solving. Dice rolls are made with a pool of 6-sided dice with a 6 usually meaning a success in overcoming trouble. You get to roll more dice if you're more skilled at something and therefore have a higher chance of getting a 6. In a crucial moment called Extended Trouble, usually near the end of the session, the GM sets the stakes and says how many successes will be required for a crucial situation. The players have to come up with a plan, and in the end, a whole lot of d6s are going to be rolled, and it's just a great suspenseful moment seeing if you will get enough to overcome the major obstacle of the game session. I have a full review of the game. I'll put a link to that one right up there, but I do highly recommend it. I also picked up Things from the Flood a while back after playing it with some friends, and it's similar but takes place in the 1990s and has some new settings and some other interesting new elements. Okay, the 3 games we've covered so far all have one thing in common. You have a game master and a group of players who roll dice to try to overcome obstacles. The next few games are quite different, generally heavier on the role-playing and storytelling, and either don't have a traditional game master or don't use dice at all. Let's take a look. Dread. Dread is a horror RPG that uses a Jenga tower as its main mechanic. No dice. The game master is called the host, and they guide the narrative for the players, who each have a character with certain traits. This is not like a character sheet with stats, but really just a bunch of answers to questions related to career, personality, skills, appearance, beliefs, etc., whatever the host decides they want to ask the players. Stuff that will help the players roleplay and perhaps give them certain advantages in-game to avoid having to make a pull. Anytime the result of an action is uncertain, you should pull a block from the Jenga tower. If it's really involved or a difficult action, it might be 2 blocks. This has the effect of building tension, just like you want in horror, and at some point, things are probably going to come crashing down. Not only do you fail in your action if the tower falls, but your character is removed from the game. This could mean death, being captured, losing your sanity, disappearing down a trapdoor, or something more mundane like giving up and walking away or getting an important personal phone call that pulls you away. This game is very well suited to one-shots, but you could also string several sessions together into a larger story if you wanted. There is advice for 5 different styles of games, from mystery to gory, just kind of different tones and flavors of horror. And there are 3 example stories for you to use in the back if you don't feel like creating your own. They are Beneath the Full Moon, which involves a spring break trip during which your guide has been mauled by something. Beneath a Metal Sky takes place on a seemingly abandoned space vessel that your crew has stumbled upon in deep space. And Beneath the Mask involves a psycho in a hockey mask at a cabin getaway where the power's gone out. So that's Dread. Now, Star-Crossed is another really interesting game that uses a Jenga tower. I bought this one a few years back and haven't actually got a chance to play it yet. It's a 2-player game of forbidden love in which the players will create characters that have a strong attraction to one another, but have a compelling reason not to act on their feelings. Like the examples in the book here talk about a galactic empress and her vizier, or 2 gym bros who certainly couldn't be anything more than workout buddies. Whenever a player wants to do something to increase the attraction, a pull from the tower must be made. If the tower falls, the characters act on their attraction at that time. The result of this forbidden collision is based on the attraction score they've built up throughout the game. Anywhere from it being too soon and resulting in a broken connection, to a brightly burning passion that results in a strong and enduring connection, albeit with some complications because of the whole forbidden thing. It seems like a really cool game, and I really like this box set that comes with blocks and some cards and some character sheets. I do feel like I need to find the right person to play this with still, but man, it sounds fun. I've read a lot of reviews that mention how well it simulates the idea of falling for someone and the perils of love. Love can be risky, dangerous even. Fiasco from Bully Pulpit Games is one that I've had the opportunity to play twice now. Now, I have a newer edition which is called Fiasco Classic. It's the same thing. Basically, a couple years ago, they made a new box set edition that comes with cards and other aids that just removes some of the barriers in the initial setup. The box set seems to be a little more marketed toward the board game crowd. It's just called Fiasco now, and Fiasco Classic is actually the original, just the booklet with the rules. It's a bit more open and flexible, but does require a bit more initial setup. Anyway, Fiasco does not have a game master, but all players are equally involved in rolling a bunch of black and white dice and then using the numbers on the dice to take turns fleshing out characters and a central web of relationships and details. Then you take turns playing it all out in scenes and watching things get a little crazy, and being very involved and sometimes directly the cause of the crazy. This is a game for people who don't mind being imaginative and really role-playing. The first time I played it, we were on an Allied submarine during World War II. Some crazy relationships were formed. Things like, I know your character's responsible for my father's death, but you don't know that I know, and things like that. And on board the submarine was an unknown object that was very dangerous. This house of cards came crumbling down in fine fashion, and it was just a beautiful disaster. It felt like a work of art. I was also playing with a group of people who were really good at role-playing and just were really serious. Like, it got dark. The second time I played, I didn't gel quite as well with the group. I felt like it was a little bit more goofy, but still a lot of fun. We played out a game on a peaceful block in suburban America with a sort of body-snatching alien invasion where we didn't quite know who was really human. The ending was a bit of a bloodbath involving some major destruction of property. Now, the core book here includes 4 play sets, which is just kind of like the sandbox for a session. It includes all the elements you need. There's Main Street, which takes place in a nice southern town. Boomtown, which takes place in the Wild West. Suburbia, which is pretty self-explanatory. And The Ice, which is set at a station in Antarctica. There are a lot of other play sets out there online, and you can buy books that have more of them. Some are free, some are paid. So Fiasco is an amazing game, but I really do think you need the right group. It's for people who can get creative, collaborative, and really go for it, and you have to kind of understand each other's tone and what you're going for. Also, it's definitely a one-shot sort of game. It's not for campaigns. One thing I'll add here is that Fiasco could actually be attractive to a more mainstream audience than most RPGs. It's definitely on the simpler side, and the box set version really isn't that different from something like a murder mystery dinner set that you might get, with the big difference that you're creating the story yourselves to a greater degree. So hopefully you're seeing a progression here of games getting pretty different from D&D, and this next one continues that trend. Alice is Missing is a silent role-playing game that is played primarily via text. Now, bear with me because I know it sounds odd, but ideally after some initial setup for the game that takes about 45 minutes where you're talking about your characters and their relationships, you'll then be playing with a group of people, possibly sitting in the same room, but just texting each other as a 90-minute timer counts down for the session. So in this game, you play the role of high school students in the sleepy Northern California town of Silent Falls. You all know each other in some way because you all have a relationship with a high school junior named Alice Briarwood, who has disappeared. During the game, you text one another and slowly unearth clues with the help of the included cards about what happened to Alice. There are several possible endings, and I really enjoyed the game, though I will say it was a bit hard for some of my players to figure out how much to make up themselves and how much to let the game determine things. They were kind of afraid of contradicting what the game was trying to do. But anyway, I played it online with some friends using a Discord server and a bot, and it took some work to set up. It was a little bit of a pain. There is a good guide available for it. There's also the Roll20 version, which probably would have been easier, especially if you already know Roll20. But personally, even though it seems like it would be perfect for online play, I kind of wished I'd just gotten my friends together in person because it just makes the cards and the timing of certain things way easier. There are certain time markers during the 90 minutes of text play, and you actually have a video that you play that has a soundtrack as well as a timer. The music has some nice dynamic differences that kind of build the tension at certain points, and there are instructions for drawing cards at certain time markers. Now, this game is definitely designed to be a one-shot event style of play, but I actually am interested in playing it again sometime because I think a different group and the possibility of pulling different cards could make it a pretty unique experience each time. I found the game to be really suspenseful and intense, and honestly, emotional. It's an interesting one. I'd recommend it if you have a group who's really comfortable with role-playing. All right, that's my list. There are lots of others I considered including as well, so maybe more videos like this in the future. But if you have any that you would recommend that are very different from D&D, Pathfinder, etc., I'd love to hear about them. Just leave some comments down below. I do read all my video comments. If you're interested in supporting the channel, don't forget, you can use my affiliate links for Amazon and DriveThruRPG down in the description. And you could also join with these amazing people to become a WASD20 patron. For just $2 a month, you could get access to the occasional behind-the-scene video or map drawing streams, as well as some other cool benefits. Check it all out over at patreon.com/WASD20. Thanks, patrons. All right, thank you all for watching. Take care, everybody. You'll see me again very soon.